In my previous life, my brother and fiancé teamed up to sabotage my company for the sake of my so-called best friend. After I went bankrupt, they stood beside her watching me collapse in the pouring rain, laughing mockingly at my pathetic state. Linda Turner, you look as pathetic as a drenched dog, they sneered. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the project bidding meeting 3 years earlier. In my previous life, when my company was just starting out, my brother and fiancé had warned me against using the Turner and Peterson family connections. They claimed it wouldn't be fair to others, but then turned around and handed projects to my best friend under various pretexts, just to see her smile. Now that I was back, I watched them secretly manipulating things just like before, giving my projects to my best friend. I finally gave up on them completely. When they found out I was leaving the country, my brother and fiancé set off fireworks all night, celebrating that they'd finally gotten rid of me, the burden. But 3 years later, at the Trotta Corp's bidding meeting, I took the stage as the CEO's wife, and they couldn't hide the redness in their eyes. After returning to Berkshire, I never expected the first familiar face I'd see would be my former best friend, Ann Miller. Ann Miller, CEO of Miller Company, entered Berkshire's top university at 18 with outstanding grades. After graduation, she started from scratch and in just 3 years became one of the business world's rising stars. On the first floor of Westfield Building, a TV screen between 2 elevators continuously displayed the achievements of Berkshire's business prodigy since she started her career. In the 3 years since I'd seen her, she had shed that timid, insecure air of someone fresh from the countryside. Now, dressed in custom-tailored formal wear, she carried herself with newfound elegance. Wealth truly transforms people. Today was the bidding conference for Trotta Corp's project in Berkshire. Reporters had been staking out the lobby since early morning. I tried to mind my own business and ignore her, but she approached me anyway. Miss Turner, it really is you. I almost didn't recognize you, she said loudly. 3 years ago you suddenly went abroad. I thought you'd never come back. Anne's voice was so loud that even the reporters observing from a distance could hear every word clearly. After she spoke, I could feel curious eyes turning toward me. Turner family, eldest daughter, Peterson Corporation, engagement, obsessed with, fiancé. Among those deliberately hushed voices, occasional fragments reached my ears. I glanced at Anne, who pretended not to notice and continued. You came back so suddenly without saying anything. Could it be because you heard? Miss Turner, I'm sorry. I misspoke. She cut herself off, seemingly realizing her blunder. But her panicked apology was clearly meant to encourage further misunderstandings. Some bold reporter had already shouted out, we heard that Ben Turner, chief designer at Turner Jewelry, and Nelson Peterson, CEO of Peterson Corporation, are both planning to propose to you. Ms. Miller, is this true or false? Ms. Miller, if both Mr. Turner and Mr. Peterson propose at the same time, who would you accept? And avoided answering directly, well, those are just internet rumors for now. I hope everyone can be rational about this. Besides, Ben and Nelson are both wonderful people. We're all good friends. The elevator opened at that moment. She bowed slightly with a smile and said, I'm sorry, but I need to go upstairs to prepare for my speech at the Trotta Corp bidding conference. She asked me politely, Miss Turner, would you like to go upstairs together? I hesitated for just a moment, but when the reporters couldn't get answers from Anne, they immediately turned their attention to me. Miss Turner, we heard that before you went abroad, you were obsessed with the CEO of Peterson Corporation. Did you suddenly return because you heard Mr. Peterson plans to propose to Ms. Miller? We heard Mr. Turner is your brother. Miss Turner, would you welcome Ms. Miller into your family? If Mr. Peterson really proposes to Ms. Miller, what will you do? Try to stop it or give your blessing? Their eyes were hungry like wolves, their heavy breathing full of greed and urgency. Most reporters don't care about the truth, they only want something sensational. I knew if I didn't respond, within an hour, all kinds of speculation about why I returned would be all over the internet. Thinking of someone who tends to get jealous easily, I waved to Anne. In that case, I'll go up first. Before the elevator doors closed, Anne's lips curled into a mocking smile that only I could see. I looked away and turned to face the reporters. Just as I was about to take out my invitation, an angry shout came from nearby. Linda Turner, who said you could come here? Are you planning to steal Anne's projects again, like you did 3 years ago? The cameras turned toward the sound. My former fiancé, Nelson Peterson, was striding toward me on his long legs, fuming with anger. 3 years later, nothing's changed, huh? Linda Turner, will you ever stop? I frowned slightly at Nelson's accusation. What do you mean? My former fiancé, who once promised to love me forever, now looked at me with nothing but disgust. Everyone in Berkshire knows that Trotta Corp plans to partner with Anne. If you're not here to steal her project, why would you suddenly fly back from abroad? Trotta Corp wants to partner with Ann Miller. How did I not know about this? My eyes widened with surprise, but Nelson mistook it for guilt at having my true intentions exposed. His disgust now mixed with contempt. Do you still think you can push it around because you're a Turner? Trotta Corp isn't like the small businesses in Berkshire. They don't care about your family name. If you don't want to make a fool of yourself, you'd better leave. I pulled out my invitation and waved it in front of him. Sorry, but I was invited to the bidding conference. You can't make me leave. You'd better not. Nelson was about to threaten me when he noticed the reporters whispering nearby. A look of realization crossed his face, followed by a sneer. Linda, I've told you, our engagement is over. Please stop being obsessed with me. Whatever happens between Anne and me, there's no future for us. You've got it all wrong. I'm only here for the bidding. I'm already married, and I couldn't care less who you end up with. I spoke clearly, explaining to Nelson wasn't my main concern. I wanted the reporters to hear the truth. The reporters fell silent, but Nelson just laughed. Linda, is this some kind of game? You think pretending to be married will make me jealous? Playing hard to get won't work. I don't care if you're married or not. I know. I nodded and stepped into the elevator that had just arrived. As long as the reporters didn't spin tails, I didn't care whether Nelson believed me. As I pressed the close button, Nelson stepped in too. The elevator doors shut, leaving just the two of us in the small space. With a dark look, Nelson asked, what will it take for you to leave? I gave him a slight smile. You don't trust Anne's ability very much, do you? How could you ever compare to Anne? He smirked. After Anne signs with Trotta Corp, I'm proposing to her right there. I don't want you around to give her the wrong idea. My response was simple and cold. Congratulations. Can't you just stop? I know you're jealous, but you can't force love. This isn't good for either of us. His voice was tired but condescending. Look, if you leave now, I'll personally personally give you 2 projects from Peterson Corp. I shook my head calmly. No thanks. His tone turned nasty. I'm only trying to protect Anne's feelings. Back off while you still can, or you'll end up with nothing. After that, I ignored everything else Nelson said. By the time the elevator doors opened, his face was red with anger. He stormed out and said one last thing to Ben Turner, who was waiting by the door, before marching off in his expensive shoes. Control your sister before she causes trouble. I looked at my biological brother and silently cursed my bad luck. I tried to walk past him, but he grabbed my arm as I stepped out of the elevator. Ben pulled me to a quiet corner and glared at me. What are you doing here? I answered flatly, bidding. This is ridiculous. Go home now. Ben scolded. Are you trying to repeat what happened 3 years ago and steal Anne's project again? Ben's words were almost identical to what Nelson had said when he first appeared. I looked up at the person who shared the closest blood tie with me in this world and couldn't help but feel the irony. 3 years ago, that project was jointly funded by Turner Enterprises and Peterson Corp. It wasn't a large project, but for a startup company, it was a rare opportunity. I thought that having connections would give me an advantage, so I went to Ben asking for the project, but he vetoed me immediately. When Nelson heard about it, he came over and scolded me too. They said it wouldn't be fair to those self-made small companies, but I didn't understand. Business is all about resource integration. If I had the ability to complete the project and the connections, why couldn't I use them? Later I found out they were supporting Ann Miller, who was also competing for the project. Right after Ben and Nelson warned me, they each sent professional teams to help and improve her project proposal. And when I was about to win by just 1 vote, they personally stepped in as judges and cast their votes for Anne, turning her defeat into victory. When I confronted them, they justified themselves confidently. Can't you show some empathy? You have 2 safety nets with Turner and Peterson, but Anne has no choice but to succeed. Since we have the ability to help her, of course we should. In my previous life, I refused to accept this and exposed the whole thing publicly, causing Anne to lose the bid. After that, I repeatedly worked against her. To get revenge for Anne, Ben and Nelson joined forces to sabotage my company, causing me to go bankrupt even before Anne did. When I was cornered by debt collectors with nowhere to turn, the 2 people who should have been closest to me stood beside Anne, mocking me as they watched my desperate situation. I lost consciousness in a heavy downpour, and when I opened my eyes again, I was back at the project bidding conference 3 years ago watching Ben and Nelson cheat for and just like in my previous life, my heart died completely. After shutting down my company, on the very night they were celebrating with Anne, I boarded a plane and left the country alone. For 3 years, they never contacted me, yet the first time I returned, they were immediately defensive, afraid I might hurt their precious loved one. Even after living 2 lifetimes, I still felt a painful ache in my heart. I'm not participating in the bid as a Turner. You have no right to make me leave. With that, I shook off his hand and started to walk away, but after just a few steps, 2 security guards suddenly appeared and blocked my path. He had supported Anne for 3 years yet still had no confidence in her abilities, still needing to cheat to help her even now, yet this useless person had managed to make the 2 people closest to me betray me repeatedly. I couldn't help but laugh. Even as I felt a sense of desolation, I wanted to ask Ben what he liked about Anne, but then felt it was pointless. Between us lay a lifetime of resentment. Reconciliation was impossible no matter the reason. Ben Turner, do you really think these 2 men can stop me? He frowned. What did you call me? Huh. I let out a soft snort and turned toward the security guards. Stop her. At Ben's command, the 2 muscular guards lunged at me. As hands reached for my shoulders, I suddenly stepped forward. While leaning my body backward, I thrust both palms forward, aiming for the exposed armpits of the guards as they raised their arms. Seeing this, the guards quickly changed tactics and pressed downward. I pulled my hands back to my chest, straightened my back with force, and leaned forward, simultaneously striking both guards in the chest with my elbows. Bang! Bang! The guards stumbled backward. I stepped around behind them and, before they could regain their balance, delivered a powerful push to each of their backs, creating distance between us as they staggered. Our positions were now reversed. As the 2 guards steadied themselves and prepared to charge again, I stepped back, positioning myself within view of the security cameras. Stop. Ben quickly called off the guards, then looked at me with a complex expression. When did you become so skilled? I gave him a silent glance before walking toward the bidding venue. Yes, why indeed, living alone abroad wasn't easy. The number of times I was robbed each month was several times higher than what others experienced. If I hadn't learned to protect myself, I probably would have died overseas long ago. By the time I entered the conference hall and was finishing her presentation, my seat wasn't far from Nelson's. When he saw me, he lowered his voice and taunted, I can't believe that useless brother of yours couldn't stop you from getting in. He gestured toward the person on stage, his eyes filled with unmistakable admiration and love. If you ruin things for Anne, don't blame me for being ruthless. Just then, Ben also entered the hall. Seeing everyone was now present, I smiled slightly and gave a subtle nod in a certain direction. And finished her last sentence and prepared to leave the stage. The host went up and asked her to stay. I'm sure everyone recognizes this familiar face. This is Ann Miller, the rising star of Berkshire's business world. In just 3 years, she's built her company from nothing. After a series of compliments, the host's expression suddenly changed, and the tone shifted.